this one, I only used 5 once. The 1 is odd, so it crosses. But I used a negative 5 4 times, which is even, so it bounces. So don't look at the actual x-intercept if it's odd or even. Look at how many times it's used, whether that's odd or even. Does that make sense? Awesome, thanks for asking. How do you guys feel about it so far? They're crazy numbers, yeah, you're right.
27, negative 27,000.
But I'm not asking you to find that one.
I know, but it's still.
Okay, now, we're going to do a couple other ones. Before I get into that, I'm actually going to do a quick change up here. What I want you guys to do, I think I know how to do this. I'm going to give you some practice problems here. In order to do the next section, you need to be able to factor. Do you remember what factoring is? Let me give you a quick example here. If I have x plus 2 and I want to multiply it with x minus 1. We talked about how to do that, right? You had to distribute, you had to do the lobster claw. Did we talk about the lobster claw? Because it looks like we multiply this out and I get x times x is x squared, x times negative 1 is negative x, 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Combine like terms, when I multiply this out, it's x plus x minus 2. When I'm going this way, this is called distribution. I'm multiplying those out. Now what factoring does is you go the other way. You start out with x squared plus x minus 2, and you need to get it into parentheses, like that. You're taking it from standard form and getting it into intercept form. Now, this was something you went over a lot in secondary too, and you probably forgot it. Right? Yes, one person. Well, hopefully more people remember than just that, but based on my experience in teaching secondary 3 for a while, a lot of people forget how to do it. But it's important. You're going to use factoring almost every chapter. So it's important that you know how to do it. So let me just kind of teach you how to do this. We'll do some practice and then we'll finish those notes, okay? So, and also there's some supplemental videos on the module where it's like factoring, non-required. I think it says supplemental. That means if you struggle with it, you should do it. But if you don't, if you know how to do it, then you don't need it. Anyway, when I'm factoring here, what I look at is I say, okay, I need to fill in 2 numbers here. Now, what's the relationship between these 2 numbers? If you look at how you distribute, the 2 and the negative 1, they multiply to give you the negative 2 here. So the 2 numbers, they need to multiply to give you negative 2. But yet, these 2 numbers right here, they added to give me 1. So then they need to add to give me 1. So I would think to myself, say self, what numbers multiply to negative 2 but add to a positive 1? Really only have 2 choices. It's either negative 1 and 2 or negative 2 and 1. Which one of those would add to give a positive 1? This is where you respond. It would be negative 1 and 2. Good job. Because negative 1 times 2 is negative 2, negative 1 plus 2 is 1. So then I put those numbers into the parentheses like that, so it would be x minus 1 and x plus 2. So do you see how factoring is kind of the opposite? Instead of multiplying it out, I'm putting it back into parentheses. But what you need to do is have that thought process, what multiplies to the constant term, but then adds to give me that linear coefficient. That's the basics of factoring. Now we're going to do 3 practice problems before we get into the lesson, okay? So, I can clear this. Okay. I'm going to do one more with you, and then I want you to do the others on your own. First one together, okay? So I'm looking at this and I'm trying to get it into parentheses. I'm going to have an x here and an x here. I'm going to have 2 numbers. me about those two numbers. What do they do? These two numbers, what do they, like, if I were to multiply them, they would multiply to give you the 8, right? And add to give you 6. So I'm putting a x there to say I'm timesing to get 8, and then I'm adding to get 6. Well, guys, what numbers multiply to give you 8? 1 and 8, and 4 and 2. Does 1 and 8 add up to 6? No, so it's not 1 and 8. Do 4 and 2 add up to 6? Yes, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 and 2 right here. 4 times 2 is 8, 4 plus 2 is 6. And I just put those into parentheses, and then you factor it. Gold star. Okay, I need you guys to work on these 3. I want you to factor them just somewhere on your notes, okay? I'm doing this for your advantage, because to finish this assignment, you need to be able to factor, and based on what I saw in my first period, you guys don't remember as much of that. So practice this. Work with your neighbor. Get these into the parentheses by saying what multiplies to negative 15 and adds to negative 2. What multiplies to 42 and adds to 13. Try those out with your neighbor. I'll give you about 2 minutes, and then we'll go over those together. Okay, just write them down anywhere. You got people. Changing it from x squared minus 20 minus 15. Get it in friends. We're going to think what number is multiplied to negative 15. So what number is multiplied to negative 15? But then you need it to add to 2. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So how can you set it up so they would add negative 2? And then those are the numbers you put in friends. Yes, good job. Okay. And also, guys, check your work with your neighbor. If you don't know your neighbors, then say, hey neighbor, my name is Mr. Solberg. Won't you be my neighbor? Hey neighbor. Yes, you're welcome to just take my notes however you want. Yeah. Okay, let's go over that first one that you were doing on your own. So, what I need you to do is explain the thought process here. I'm looking for 2 numbers that what? Okay, well 15 only has 2 factors. It's 1 and 15 or 5 and 3. 1 and 15, there's no way I'm getting 2 out of that. So it's got to be 5 and 3, but which one's positive, which one's negative? Why is it negative 3? If I did negative 3 plus 5, what would that give me? That would be a positive 2. So if I wanted a negative 2, then that's reverse that. Let's do 3 and negative 5. Gotcha. No worries. 3 times negative 5 is negative 53, minus 5 is negative 2. Those are numbers, so we just do x plus 3 and x minus 5, and that's how you factor. Those negatives can be a little tricky. Now, let's go to this next one. This one's no negative, so it should be a little more straightforward, okay? So I'm going to come to the other Brian. I'm looking for 2 numbers. Tell me about those numbers. And then they're going to add to 13, right? So what numbers multiply to 42? Does that add to 13? Then you're done. 6 and 7 are the numbers, so this is just x plus 6, x plus 7. Because 6 times 7 is 42, and 6 plus 7 is 13. That was it, right? Is this making sense? Or are you just stuck? Okay, let's do one more example. I hope this is helping. But we'll do some more examples if you need it. Yes?
Are there any other ways you can do it, like to show the process, like the answer?
Like,
Showing
it's just not making sense to you.
No, it is, but are there any other ways?
This is the simplest way that I know.
Simplest.
I think there's a lot of other methods out there, like if you Google factoring, you'd see teachers do it a lot of different ways, but I feel like this is the easiest way. So you're more than welcome to go and like research this, and if there's one that works better for you, great, but this is what I think is the easiest. Now, looking at this next one, is there anyone who got that next one? Jay, tell me what you did. Good job. There's no middle term, so that means they cancel each other out. Okay, keep going. Because they multiply negative 49, they add to 0, right? So that gives you x plus 7 and x minus 7. And there you go. How could you check your work here? If you just multiplied it out, it should take you back to what you started. Okay, so that was kind of just a quick review of factoring. Now the reason why we went over that is because we are going to now go back to this. Here is my polynomial. I want to graph it. It's in standard form, and there's things I know about it in standard form, but I need to know the x-intercepts. So guess what we're going to have to do? How are we going to do that? What were we just doing? By factoring. Thanks, Ruby. All right, so let's go over this real quick. First off, when I look at this, I see that the leading term here is x squared. That tells me the shape. What shape are we going to get from x squared? A U shape. When I look at this right here, so this tells me I'm going to have a U. When I look at the 48, that's going to be the y-intercept. Now, my graph doesn't go that high, so we're not going to get to it today. But that tells me two important things. What I need to figure out now is the x-intercepts, and the way we're going to do that is by factoring. Alright, so tell me here, guys, what is my thought process for factoring? I'm looking for two numbers that, what? Awesome. 48 has a lot of factors. Well, let's go through them. Is 1 and 48, will that give me 16? No. 2 and 24? No. 3 and 16? No, the next one is 4 and 12. Does that work? Golden, that's what we want. So I'm going to put in here x plus 4 and x minus 12. Do you have any questions on how I got that to factor? Okay, but now this is where we're going to start doing what we did just on the last one. Now that I know that those are my this is what it is in intercept form, I can figure out what the x-intercepts are by saying what is the opposite here. Yes? Yeah, I was like halfway through doing that, and there we go. Is that better? All right, thanks for catching on that. So guys, based on those parentheses, what is the x-intercepts going to be? -4 and -12. Good job. Now notice each of those are only used once. So our multiplicities for each of those is just 1. So what's going to happen at both of those? Cross and cross. Okay, my graph here is not going to look very good because it comes off the screen, but I've got -4. And then if I go to -12, I'm over here. My y-intercept is 48, that's clear off the graph. But I'm going to come down like this. Something like that. Okay? you have any questions on that one? I'm hoping this is starting to make sense. Last time, we didn't do any of them when they're in standard form, so this is new stuff. Okay, let's go to this next one. I want you to take 30 seconds and try to factor that first. It's just like one of the examples we did. Okay, is there anyone who is able to get that factor? Jade, you did our last one, so I want to see if there's someone else. Someone besides Jade. Brian, I'm looking at you. You get it?
Yes.
Tell me what you did.
Does it have to be negative? Negative 60? Oh wait, we're still on.
We're on this one. So I'm trying to factor that. So tell me what our thought process is. I'm looking for two numbers that what? Multiply to negative 16, okay. And then what do they add to? To 0, there's nothing in there, right? Now guys, that should be a good clue right there. If they add to 0, that means it's the same number but opposites. So what numbers multiply to negative 16 that are opposites? 4 and negative 4. So this is just going to be x plus 4 and x minus 4. That's how you factor that. So if you did that, good job. Alright, Caleb. But let's go back for a second, Caleb. X squared is my first term. What is that going to look like when I graph that? That's a u, because it's even and the leading coefficient is positive. So I know it's going to be a U shape, and this minus 16 right here, that's the y-intercept. So if I went all the way down, negative 16 somewhere around there, okay? There's negative 16. Okay, now I know that it has an x-intercept. What would this x-intercept be? And this one? They're both used once, so it's just going to cross at both of those. So it's just going to be a parabola like this, goes all the way down to there. There you go. You just did that polynomial. Don't you feel great? Alright guys, we're going to do one more and then we'll take a break, alright? Can you hang in with me for one more?
Yes.
And then I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to just relax for a second, okay? Or sorry, let me go back. Is anyone still ready? Are you good on this one?
So remember you after those are the answers, right? Those are the answers.
Which
So
number?
the negative 4 and the 4.
Yeah, so that's what you put in the parentheses, because it'll be x and then plus 4, x minus 4. Yes, that's what you put in. Alright, let's go on. This is our last group right here. Now, looking at this first one, guys, how is this one different from some of the other ones we've been working with factoring? So we've got 3 terms. That's kind of the same, but what do you notice about the first term? There's a 2, there's a leading coefficient. Now what we were doing before, it's not going to work here. We're going to have to use a method called split and group. And I guarantee you guys saw this last year,
Yeah.
but I'm going to go over it again, okay? So split and group, there's 2 steps. Number 1, we're going to split it up, so instead of there being 3 terms, we're going to do 4. Split up into 4 so that then we can do grouping. So I call this split and group. I'm going to demonstrate how to do it here, and then you guys, we're going to do it more on your own for the next one, and then that's our break. To do split and group, we're going to start kind of similar to what we did on the last one, okay? I'm going to say what multiplies to this, what adds to this, but I'm not going to look at 20. I'm actually going to times the leading coefficient, the 2 here, which if I looked at letters is A times C. Do you remember hearing that? A times C?
Yeah.
We do 2 times 20, which is what? 40, so I'm saying, hey, what multiplies to 40 but adds to that middle number, 13? So guys, what numbers multiply to 40? 5 and 8. Does 5 and 8 add to 13? Yeah, now if you were like, well, 4 and 10, well, 4 and 10 is 14, but that's not it, right? So you check until you get it, and yep, the numbers here are 8 and 5. So what I'm going to do with that 8 and 5 is I'm actually going to replace the 13 with 8x plus 5x. So I'm splitting that 13 into 8x plus 5x. Now it's okay to do that because what is 8x plus 5x? 13x, so I didn't change anything, right? Still the same value, but I'm splitting it up here. So now I've got 2x squared plus 8x plus 5x plus 20. So what I've done is I split it up into 4 terms. That's the first step. Now what you're going to do is you're going to use grouping. That's where you put it into groups and you look for the greatest common factor, what they have in common. Guys, this first group, I have 2x squared and 8x. What do they have in common? They both have an x, and what else? They're even, which means they're divisible by 2. So I can factor out 2x. And factoring out is kind of like dividing it out. Okay, so 2x squared, if I divide that by 2x, I'm left with just an x. And 8x divided by 2, or 2x is 4. Do you see how if I multiply this back out, I get to 2x squared plus 8x? So I just factored out the 2x. Now look at this second group here. What do 5x and 20 have in common? The 5, right? 5 goes into both of them. 5 goes into 5x once. How many times does 5 go into 20? 4. So now I factored out the greatest common factor of the two groups. And look at this. What do they both have in common? X plus 4. This is our new common factor. What we're going to do is we're actually going to factor out that x plus 4, bring it to the very beginning. So I'm dividing that out, so I get x plus 4. And what is still in the parentheses there? 2x and plus 5. Do you remember this one? There are some teachers, and this is the only way they teach. Even like the other ones that we saw, they would do that, but it takes a little bit longer. That's why I said the way I do it. I think it's the easiest. Now, what does that mean? That took us a while, but what we just did was we just factored this to say, okay, this is standard form, but intercept form is x plus 4 multiplied with 2x plus 5. Now, this is a skill that you should know, okay? If you want to do like level 4 stuff in this class, you need to be able to do that. Okay, let's go back now and talk about graphing this, okay? So let's go to Emma. What shape is this going to make? I'll give you a clue. Only look at this one. It's a U because it's squared and it's positive, so I know it's going to be a U. And what will the y-intercept be? There you go. Good job. That constant term, that's the y-intercept. Now, I factored it so I can figure out the x-intercepts. What is this x-intercept going to be? -4. And it's only used once, so it crosses. This one's a little bit trickier. Sometimes people say that's -5. Well, there's a 2 in there as well. So in order to figure out that one, what we're going to do is we're going to take 2x plus 5 and set it equal to 0. And then we're going to do some algebra to solve for x. So let's go through our basic algebra skills. Go back to like junior high. If I was solving for x, what would you do? Subtract the 5, yeah? So I'd get 2x equals -5. And then what would you do?